Imagine discovering a city in the middle of the jungle. Not ruins, a real city, with temples taller than a 10-story building, palaces stretching for hundreds of meters, and plazas that once held tens of thousands of people. Now imagine that city completely empty. No war. No plague. No bodies. Just silence, and slowly encroaching jungle. This is what explorers found when they stumbled upon the ruins of Tikal in the 19th century. And Tikal was just one of dozens of abandoned Maya cities scattered across the jungles of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. The Maya civilization had been one of the most advanced in human history. At its peak, between 250 and 900 AD, the classic Maya had built a network of city-states that covered an area the size of modern Texas. They had developed a fully written language, one of only 5 ever independently invented in human history. They had created a calendar so precise that it still astonishes modern astronomers. They had mapped the movements of Venus to within 2 hours over a 500-year period. And then, between roughly 800 and 1000 AD, it collapsed. In what historians call the terminal classic period, one by one, the great Maya cities went silent. Populations that had numbered in the hundreds of thousands shrank to almost nothing. Temples that had taken generations to build were simply abandoned. The last long count date was inscribed at a major city in 909 AD, and then the classic Maya world was gone. In this video, we're going to explore the greatest mystery of the ancient Americas: why did the Maya civilization collapse? Because the answer, it turns out, may be more relevant to our own world than we'd like to admit. To understand the collapse, you first need to understand what the Maya actually built. The Maya were not a single empire with a capital city and one ruler. They were more like ancient Greece, a collection of powerful city-states that shared a language, a religion, and a culture, but were constantly competing with and fighting each other. At the peak of the classic period, cities like Tikal, Palenque, Copan, and Calakmul were home to tens of thousands of people. They had running water channels, sophisticated drainage systems, and raised agricultural fields that could produce food for large urban populations. Their architecture was extraordinary. The temples at Tikal rise 65 meters above the jungle floor, taller than the Statue of Liberty. The palace at Palenque has a tower that was apparently used as an astronomical observatory. The hieroglyphic stairway at Copan contains over 2,000 glyphs, the longest single Maya inscription ever found, essentially a royal history carved in stone. And yet, for all their achievements, the Maya lived in a world of constant fragility. Their cities depended on a delicate balance: enough rain to fill the reservoirs, enough soil to feed the population, enough stability to maintain trade. Archaeologists have found evidence of extraordinary planning: massive reservoir systems capable of storing millions of gallons of water, agricultural terracing on steep hillsides to prevent soil erosion, complex canal systems to irrigate fields. These were not primitive people improvising from day to day. They were sophisticated engineers who understood their environment and designed their cities to survive within it. The question is, what pushed that system past the point of no return? For most of the 20th century, historians debated 2 main theories for the Maya collapse: warfare and overpopulation. Both had merit. Archaeological evidence clearly shows that the final century of the classic Maya was marked by an explosion of warfare between city-states. Fortifications appeared around cities that had never needed them before. Monuments were smashed and defaced by conquering armies. Entire royal dynasties were wiped out. At the same time, population studies suggest that many Maya cities were straining the limits of their agricultural systems. More people meant more land cleared for farming. More land cleared meant more soil erosion. More soil erosion meant less food. Then, in the 1990s and 2000s, a new piece of evidence entered the picture that changed everything: climate data. Scientists studying ancient lake sediments, cave stalactites, and marine cores from the Caribbean found compelling evidence of a series of severe droughts that struck the Maya lowlands at almost exactly the time of the collapse. A landmark 2012 study published in the journal Science reconstructed rainfall patterns going back 2,000 years using isotope analysis of lake sediments in Belize. The results were startling. Between 800 and 1000 AD, precisely the period of the Maya collapse, the region experienced multiple multi-year droughts, including one period of dramatically reduced rainfall lasting nearly a century. The researchers calculated that annual rainfall may have dropped by as much as 50% during peak drought years. For a civilization that depended entirely on seasonal rainfall to fill its reservoirs and grow its crops, this was catastrophic. A single bad year could be survived. 5 consecutive bad years would be a crisis. A century of reduced rainfall would be the end. But drought alone cannot explain the collapse. After all, the Maya had survived droughts before. What made this one different? Here is where the story becomes truly fascinating and deeply unsettling. The Maya collapse was not just a natural disaster. It was a systemic failure, in which multiple crises reinforced each other in a spiral of destruction that the civilization could not escape. Think about what a severe drought does to a complex society. First, harvests fail. Food stores run low. Hungry people become desperate people. Desperate people fight over what remains, first between families, then between villages, then between cities. The warfare that archaeologists see in the final decades of classic Maya cities was not the cause of the collapse. It was the symptom. Cities that had traded with each other for centuries became enemies competing for the same dwindling resources. Rulers who had once justified their power through elaborate religious ceremonies and public works projects could no longer deliver prosperity to their people. When a king cannot make it rain, his authority crumbles. Several major cities show evidence of what appears to be violent revolution in their final years: elite residences burned, royal monuments smashed, the symbols of power deliberately destroyed. The people had turned on their rulers. And as each city collapsed, it disrupted the trade networks and political alliances that had held the whole system together. A collapse in one city sent shockwaves through its neighbors. Those neighbors, already weakened by drought and internal conflict, could not absorb the shock. They fell in turn. The system, once it began to unraveled fast. The Maya collapse was not total, and this is an important point that is often overlooked. The Maya did not disappear. More than 8 million Maya people live in Mexico and Central America today, maintaining languages, traditions, and cultural practices that link them directly to their classic ancestors. What collapsed was a specific political and social system, the network of large, interconnected city-states that had dominated the southern lowlands. In the north, cities like Chichen Itza continued to thrive for centuries after the southern collapse. In the highlands of Guatemala, powerful Maya kingdoms survived until the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. And even in the abandoned cities of the south, small populations continued to live among the ruins for generations, farming the old fields and occasionally reusing the temples, though no longer building new ones. But the civilization as it had existed, the elaborate court culture, the long-distance trade networks, the competitive monument building, the vast urban populations, that was gone. And it was gone with a speed that still seems almost incomprehensible. A city like Copan, with a population of perhaps 20,000 at its peak, had essentially been abandoned within a century. The jungle, which had been cleared by farmers for centuries, began to reclaim the plazas and temples almost immediately. Within a few generations, most of the knowledge of how to read and write the Maya script had been lost. The warning here is not subtle. The Maya built a civilization that lasted 1,000 years, sustained by ingenuity, ambition, and extraordinary resilience. And it collapsed anyway, brought down by a combination of climate stress, resource depletion, political fragmentation, and cascading failure that no amount of engineering or intelligence could ultimately prevent. It is a story worth remembering.